In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold.
Parasite stress theory, illustrated by researcher Corey Fincher and Randy Thornhill, is a theory of human evolution proposing that parasites and diseases encountered by species shape the development of species' values and qualities. The difference in how these parasites and diseases stress people's development is what leads to difference in their biological mate value and mate preferences, as well as differences across culture. Parasites causing disease pose potential ecological hazards, and subsequently selection pressures can alter psychology and social behaviors of humans, as well as have an influence on their immune system. Now you're probably like, Towers, what the fuck are you talking about? And I'm here to tell you, we got a good one tonight.
The Abracast, occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We're recording here this evening, the day after Turkey Day, from Quarantine Zone Charlie in the People's Republic of Pennsylvania. I'm John Towers, and this is the Abercast. Hey, just want to take a quick second while I'm opening up here to ask everyone to go to Advertise.com. Check out the storefronts there, the t-shirts, the tarot cards, the t-shirts, the graphic novels and comic books that are available. Check them out. While you're there, please consider signing into the Fulgar Correspondentia. That's just a fancy way of saying the newsletter. Sign into the newsletter there, and to all the supporters out there, here. This bud's for you. Thank you very much for your financial support. I do appreciate it. And if you're a Patreon supporter, check your messages, because shit's changing on Patreon. So I don't want anyone to be freaked out when it happens. So as we're wrapping up here, 2020, the year of COVID-19, I ran across this study, and I thought it was interesting. That's why I opened up the cold open with the parasite stress theory. That was the parasite stress theory as stated by Wikipedia, by the way, full disclosure. But this study that we're reading is called Pathogens in Politics, Further Evidence That Parasite Prevalence Predicts Authoritarianism. And if that doesn't prick the hairs up on the back of your neck, hang tight with me. In the light of parasite stress theory and how these parasites and diseases encountered by species shape the development of the species' values and qualities. So take that here. I actually want to highlight that. I'm going to be doing a lot of this stuff on the fly this evening, so I apologize. This thing is thick, and I tried to, I did a marginally acceptable job at it. So this study is done by Damian R. Murray, Mark Schaller, and a guy named Peter Suedfeld. I found this on PLOS One. This was written in 2013. It was published online on May 1st, 2013. And I'll put a link to this in the newsletter this month because it's fantastic. And also this link refers to a lot of other studies and links. So you'll be able to follow if you want to do like more in-depth things. But, we're looking at this situation where, we still don't really know who won what. Both sides are talking real loud. But, Biden and Kamala Harris have been out there talking about ruling by president executive orders. They're talking about acting within the first 100 days, letting Congress act within the first 100 days to get some kind of gun laws passed. If not, they're going to do it by executive orders. They're talking about the thing that's freaking me out is they're talking about doing a retroactive tax on guns you already own. So every gun I own, in theory, I'll have to pay a $200 tax for. And I mean, that shit is fucked up. And, you might want to, I don't know your politics, obviously, and I don't really care to get into a debate about it. But the thing is that's authoritarianism. They're stepping on your constitutional rights. The Second Amendment. It can't be infringed. They infringe upon it all the time. It's an authoritarian move. So that's kind of where the seed of this is coming from. But it does get really interesting when we get down to it. But it's not just 2A, right? It's 1A. We have people, there's this new book that just came out saying how the media trained us to love propaganda and hate journalism. And I think that I'm a little bit older than you guys. So I remember what the news was like before it got crazy. I'm not saying that the news needs to be partisan or bipartisan or unpartisan. The news was never like that. That's why there's always two newspapers in a big city. One is a conservative newspaper and one is a liberal newspaper. That's just the way it is. But it's not, that's the way it was. Now they're all, for the most part, liberal newspapers. But the amount of free speech that's being impeded, and I'm not saying it's being impeded by the government per se, but you can go and check the media area in the feature topic links on Advertise.com. You go. This is something that we've been talking about forever. As long as the show's been around, we've been talking about techno censorship, the ethics of these companies that take startup money from the government and get subsidized by the government, and then they turn around and shadow ban and put people on in service to the algorithm that buries their stuff. It's not ethical, and it's wrong. No one talks about that. So that's authoritarianism. The state question gets a little muddy and gray there, but your rights are being infringed by a monolithic big tech. A monolithic industry is stepping on what you're allowed to post in what is become the public forum. So this is something that needs to be talked about. And instead of talking about it as a politics episode or whatever, or a big tech censorship or media episode, I thought that this is a great way. Instead of that, we'll talk about it as a COVID episode, right? So, all right, I feel like I babbled enough. Let's we're gonna get into this. Let's see here. So one other thing to point out is this was written in 2013. So this was not written in the shadow of COVID, or this wasn't written talking about COVID or lockdowns or whatever. Yeah, you want to talk about authoritarianism? Listen to this. I saw many people on my Facebook feed, which is a brand new feed, by the way. If you're following me on Facebook or if we were Facebook friends, my account got hacked. They didn't really do anything fun or interesting with it. I don't know why they wanted it, but find me again out there, and I will, of course, accept any friend requests given to me by listeners. But I saw people going, there's at least posting this for everyone they know to read. They say, there's at least 4 of my neighbors that don't care about the spread of the virus and have more than 12 people in their homes. And I want to reach out and be like, bro, if you're worried about how many people your fucking neighbor has, just don't go over there and stop being a cunt. I have standing. I'm a fucking COVID survivor. Okay. Pathogens in politics. Further evidence that parasite prevalence predicts authoritarianism. According to a parasite stress hypothesis, authoritarian governments are more likely to emerge in regions characterized by high prevalence of disease-causing pathogens. Now, I just want to point this out. I'm only going to do it once. That in this study, specifically in the first test, they talk a lot about actual parasites. But according to the parasite stress theory, it's parasites and diseases. Okay, so I feel like we could still be talking about the same thing. I understand that viruses aren't specifically parasites because they can't reproduce, but just stick with me. Hold on loosely, okay? Recent cross-national evidence is consistent with this hypothesis, but there are inferential limitations associated with that evidence. We report 2 studies that address some of these limitations and provide other tests of the hypothesis. Study 1 revealed that parasite prevalence strongly predicted cross-national difference on the measure of assessing individuals' authoritarian personalities, and this effect statistically mediated the relationship between parasite prevalence and authoritarian governance. So, for our stated purpose, it would be revealed that virus or disease prevalence strongly predicted cross-national difference on assessing individuals' authoritarian personalities, and this effect statistically mediated the relationship between disease or virus prevalence and other governance. The mediation result is inconsistent with the alternative explanation for previous findings, which is fascinating when we get to it. To address further limitations associated with cross-national comparisons, Study 2 tested the parasite stress hypothesis on a sample of traditional small-scale societies. Results revealed that parasite prevalence predicted measures of authoritarian governance and did so when statistically controlling for other threats to human welfare. Together, these results further substantiate the parasite stress hypothesis of authoritarianism and suggest the societal differences in authoritarian governance results, in part from cultural difference and individuals' authoritarian personalities. Okay, so we kind of lay it out there. Let's do it. That was the abstract, as they call it. Introduction. Systems of government differ wildly, and one important dimension on which they vary is authoritarianism. In contrast with liberal democratic forms of government, authoritarian governance is defined by high concentrated power structures that repress dissident and emphasize submission to authority, social conformity, and hostility towards outgroups, the others. Why is governance in some states and societies more authoritarian than others? Economic variables, including the overall availability of economic resources and the manner in which those resources are distributed, provide partial answers to the questions. Ecological variables may play a role as well. Recently, it has been suggested that societal variability to authoritarian governance may result in part from the variability in the prevalence of disease-causing parasites, read viruses. Although results from several initial studies support this parasite stress hypothesis of authoritarian governance, alternative explanations for such results remain unaddressed. Here, we report results from 2 additional investigations designed to test the parasite stress hypothesis and to address inferential limitations of previous studies. Why might there be a causal link between the prevalence of infectious disease in the local ecology and in authoritarian systems of governance? The hypothesis follows from an analysis of several defining characteristics of authoritarian political systems, such as institutionalized emphasis on social conformity, intolerance of dissent, and ethnocentrism that may have implications for the spread of the infectious disease. Because many disease-causing parasites or viruses are invisible and their actions mysterious. Disease control has historically depended substantially on adherence to ritualized behavior practices. Wear a mask. Stay 6 feet away. Follow the arrows in the fucking grocery store. Make sure to sanitize your hands sing the birthday song when you wash your hands. Anyhow, all that reduces infection risk. Individuals who openly dissent from or simply fail to conform to these behavioral traditions therefore posed a health threat to others, to self. So that's another thing that I've been seeing, and I'm sure you have too, over and over again. All these people that used to fucking be punk rock, all these motherfuckers out there that are like, I'm a rebel, man. They're all now going, God damn it, just wear your mask. Save your grandmother and wear your mask. It's because people are openly descending from, or simply failing to conform to mask wearing, to social distancing, to all that stuff. These behavioral traditions therefore pose a health threat to self and others. Thus, while there can be societal cost associated with any collective behavioral tendency towards obedience and conformity, just wear your mask, goddammit. You motherfucking Nazi, wear your mask. At least 4 of my neighbors weren't paying attention to the governor's rules about 12 people being in one house at one time, and I'm very upset. Inhibition of technological innovation. There can be disease-specific benefits too, presuming that a greater proportion of these behavioral traditions serve to mitigate rather than propagate the spread of the disease. These benefits would have been greater and more likely to outweigh the costs under circumstances in which disease-causing parasites and or viruses placed greater stress on human welfare. Circumstances in which these parasites were specifically virulent and or prevalent. The logical analysis has implications for predictable variations in individuals' attitudes and values, and for worldwide societal differences too. At a psychological level of analysis, empirical evidence reveals that the subjective perception of infection risk causes individuals to be more conformist. Just wear your mask, god damn it. This, at least 4 of my neighbors are not adhering to the 12-person rule, and they are spreading the virus. Just wear your mask, god damn it. To prefer conformity and obedience in others, to respond more negatively towards others who fail to conform, and to endorse more conservative socio-political attitudes. At a societal level of analysis, empirical evidence reveals that in countries and cultures characterized by historically higher prevalence of parasitic and/or viral disease, people are less individualistic. I'm going to read that one again, not for you, for me. I feel like I missed the cue. At a societal level of analysis, empirical evidence reveals that in countries and cultures characterized by historically higher prevalence of parasitic diseases, people are less individualistic, exhibit lower levels of disproportional openness to newer things, are more likely to conform to majority opinion, and more strongly to endorse blinding moral values that emphasize group loyalty, obedience, and respect for authority. All these fucking punk rockers. I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Yes, which arrows am I supposed to follow? Oh, is my mask on right? Is my nose hanging out? Am I socially distanced? Fuck you, I will do what you tell me. Fuck you, I will do what you tell me. Just wear your fucking mask. In addition to their intolerance for non-conformity, authoritarian political systems are also characterized by nepotism and ethnocentrism. These behavioral tendencies, too, have been empirically linked to the threat of disease at a psychological level of analysis. Individuals who are, or who merely perceive themselves to be, more vulnerable to the infection tend to endorse a more xenophobic and ethnocentric attitudes. At a societal level of analysis, countries characterized by higher prevalence of parasitic disease are also characterized by stronger family ties, increased frequency of interstate ethnic conflict, and several indicators of increased ethnocentrism, although the interpretation of some of these remains a matter of some disagreement. So I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but I believe that these studies and these tests that they're referring to took place in like more third world countries. So some of this stuff just doesn't apply to the Western world, right? Like all this talk about ethnocentrism, I believe that's all just tilted on their head, and the xenophobia maybe might not be such aspect of it, but it's definitely skewed here because of how it got politicized, how the whole mask thing, the reaction became politicized. And if you don't agree that it's political, I mean, I don't know what fucking reality you're in. So I just felt like I should say that we do wander off sometimes into this ethnocentric world that this kind of talk here. But remember, this is in 2013. No one is talking about this being taking place in a first world, which is kind of why I find it so interesting. You know, bumping this work up next to what's happening in our world, right outside our window, right now. You know, while you're staring at your neighbors and counting the number of cars and the number of people in the window of their house. Okay, to the extent that institutionalized forms of governance reflect the attitudes and values of the individuals who populate this local ecology, these lines of research has implications for predicting worldwide variability in authoritarian governance. governance. I gotta highlight that. Predicting worldwide variability of authoritarian governance. In places where parasitic diseases have posed, in places where parasitic and or viral diseases have posed greater stress on human health and welfare, authoritarian forms of governance may be especially likely to emerge and persist over time. Sorry, I'm taking notes. I have to do this on the fly this evening. Usually I'm a little bit more prepared. Thornhill and colleagues empirically tested the parasite stress hypothesis using modern geographical entities. What they're talking about are countries. The units of analysis, the hypothesis was tested on 4 different measures of democratization and or authoritarianism using a parasite stress measure derived from a modern epidemiological base. Consistent evidence was observed across all measures. Higher levels of parasite stress were associated with less democratic, more highly authoritarian political systems. These relationships remain statistically significant when statistically controlling for measures of economic development and economic inequality, as assessed by the country's GDP per capita, respectively. Additional analyzers revealed that country-level differences in authoritarian governance were even more strongly predicted by measures of historical rather than modern-day parasitical prevalence, a finding consistent with the hypothesis that authoritarian governance is consequential rather than a cause of parasite stress. So even in places where parasite or viral disease stress were happening in the past and not necessarily prevalent today, the authoritarianism the modern authoritarianism is standing under or in the shadow of that disease from the past. However, non-trivial inferential issues arise from the use of contemporary nation states as units of analysis. Until these issues are addressed empirically, it is difficult to draw confident conclusions about the relationship between parasite stress and authoritarian governance. One issue pertains to the history of European colonization and its consequences. When countries colonize other geographical regions, they often impose their own political and economic institutions onto those regions. Those institutions may persist even after those regions attain independence. It has been argued that ecological variables, such as the prevalence of infectious disease, predict societal outcomes primarily because of the influence of particular patterns of colonial settlements, such that European colonial powers were more likely to establish long-lasting democratic political systems and economic institutions in regions characterized by lower incidence of infectious diseases. This represents a very different causal process than is implied by the parasite stress hypothesis. We conducted 2 separate investigations using 2 different empirical strategies to address this inferential issue, and thus to more rigorously test the hypothesized relation between parasite, or in our case, viral stress, and authoritarian governance. The first study revisits the country-level analyses reported previously. The alternative explanation, the differential colonial establishment of political institutions, is tested, examining relations not only between disease prevalence and state-level authoritarianism evident in government institutions, but also by examining the relation between those variables and authoritarian attitudes expressed by individuals who populate the country. The colonial establishment of institutions explanation implies a direct causal influence of disease prevalence on state-level authoritarian governance, which may, in turn, have downstream consequences for individual-level authoritarian attitudes. Wear your mask. Stay 6 feet away from me. Conversely, look, I mean, God bless you. You know, whatever you got to do to feel safe, man. I'm just looking at the long-term ramifications of this thing, and I'm like, I just hope they make porn where people still spit on each other. Like, what is the future of this going to be like? Conversely, the parasite stress hypothesis implies a more direct causal influence of disease prevalence on individual authoritarian attitudes, which in turn would be expected to have a consequent influence on state-level systems of government. In a statistical analytical terms, the alternative explanation implies an indirect relation between disease prevalence and individuals' authoritarian attitudes that is statistically mediated by authoritarian governance. Whereas the parasite stress hypothesis implies an indirect relation between disease prevalence and authoritarian governance that is statistically mediated by individuals' authoritarian attitudes.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content by signing up for the mailing list.
All right, well, hey, remember to check out abracast.com, sign up for the Fulgar Correspondentia. Check out the feature topic link there, the storefront. We have the official Abracast tarot card deck, which is fly. It's this fucking fly ass graphic novels and comic books and t-shirts and stuff. I think the t-shirts and stuff are still on sale, if I'm not mistaken, until Cyber Monday. 35% off. Check them out. There's a lot of really cool designs there. Okay, I think that's all I want to talk about. Okay, in addition to testing the alternative explanation, the results of this study also has implications for understanding of individual level authoritarian attitudes as they relate to social outcomes. This is stuff like counting, this is like Nazi youth stuff, right? Hitler's youth stuff, counting how many people your neighbor have in their house, accosting people that you see outside that don't have a fucking mask on. This is individual level authoritarian attitudes that we're talking about as they relate to societal outcomes. Research on the authoritarian personality of individuals indicates some relation between politically entrenched authoritarian systems of governance and individually expressed authoritarian personality traits, such as governments and individuals have in common their emphasis on adherence to conventional attitudes, repression of dissent, and devotion to order and hierarchy. Just wear your masks, okay? Don't you care? But the direction of causality is unclear. To what extent does the correlation reflect the influence of government institutions on individual personalities versus the influence on individual personalities on systems of governance? By introducing an additional variable into the analysis, the testing statistical mediation or results may contribute towards some resolution to this question. The second study further addresses alternative explanations based on European colonialism by testing the parasite stress hypothesis on a sample of more traditional societies documented within the Stanford Cross Cultural Sample. The Stanford Cross Cultural Sample consists of 186 worldwide cultural populations, many of which are small-scale Aboriginal societies. Kashadan and Steele employs the SCCS dataset to test several other hypothesized consequences of disease prevalence that had previously been tested only with the cross-national... Okay, blah, 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 blah. Especially those values pertaining to adherence to group norms, well employed the same strategy, provided the empirical complementary tests. Okay, God, Jesus, I'm in the weeds. Drawing on extensive ethnographic and database, cultures that compromise the SCCS are described by hundreds of numerically coded variables gathered by dozens of different ethnographers, including... Oh, still with ethnographies. All right, so bust it. Look, we're moving on, okay? We're going to go to study 1. We're going to talk about... Should we talk about the methods? God, there's so much good stuff. All right, I'm going to try. Okay. Analysis were conducted on 31 countries. This is study 1, the method. Analysis were conducted on 31 countries for which empirical data were available for the variables of primal conceptual interest, authoritarian governance, individual authoritarianism, and historical prevalence of disease-causing parasites. The complete data for this study is available at link. Again, I'm going to put this whole thing in the newsletter for this month, which comes out the first of next. Okay, so I'll put the link in the newsletter for next month, and you can follow all these links. Authoritarian governance. We employed 4 variables that are either directly or inversely indicative of authoritarian governance. Previous analyses reveal that all 4 variables are predicted by measures of parasite stress. 2 measures were obtained from freedomhouse.org. Again, the link will be in there. Each of the countries provided numerical values indicating the following: governmental restrictions on individuals' rights and governmental restrictions on individuals' civil liberties. A third measure assesses the extent to which the law protects the rights of the individuals to own and accrue private property. Here, private property does not necessarily mean real estate. It's private property, guns, books, I don't know, whatever kind of shit you might own, stuff. The 4th measure was Van and Hein's Index of Democracy from the years 1999 to 2001. This index was derived from 2 components: democratic governance systems, competition, and participation in the electoral process, which were weighted equally in computation of the overall democracy index. So what was the results of study number 1? Well, I'm glad you asked, because that's the next section we're going to talk about. Preliminary analysis revealed that pathogen prevalence strongly predicted all 4 measures of authoritarian governance. These results replicate previous findings on a smaller subset of countries included in our analysis. Additional results revealed that individuals' authoritarianism scores were also strongly predicted by pathogen prevalence. So if you're the motherfucker who was peering out your windows last night, counting the cars and the people you could see in your fucking neighbor's house, and you were so offended and outraged, you're this authoritarianist personality that we're talking about. In order to test unique effects on individuals' authoritarian scales, pathogen prevalence and the 4 control variables were entered simultaneously as predictors into a regression equation. Okay, whoa. The key, we're going to jump ahead a little bit. Let's see if we can pick it back up. The key question is whether the relationship between pathogen prevalence and authoritarian governance is mediated by individual level authoritarianism. I'm looking at you. To address this question, we employed a bootstrapping procedure. We determined path coefficients and regression analysis and determine. Okay. All right. Whoa. If you're interested in all this stuff, you can find the link in the newsletter when it comes out in a few days. For the sake of comparison, skipping ahead, we performed another set of bootstrapping, and I'm just going to the end. The mediation results suggest the ecological prevalence of infectious disease predicts the individual authoritarian personalities of people living within that ecological region. And these individual level dispositions in turn give rise to sustain the authoritarian systems of governance. These results are consistent with the logical implications of the parasite stress hypothesis and are inconsistent with an alternative explanation suggesting the correlation between disease prevalence and authoritarianism is based solely on the colonial establishment of state-level institutions. Okay, let's talk about study number 2, the method. Analysis were conducted on 90 cultural populations described within the SCCS, for which empirical data were available on variables of primary conceptual interest, authoritarian governance, and historical prevalence of infectious disease. Analysis were conducted on 90 cultural populations described anyhow, okay, so it provides a link for this study. Again, the link for this whole paper will be in the newsletter that will be published in a few days. Authoritarian governance, drawing on ethnographic observations, Ross coded 42 numerical variables assessing aspects of political life in 90 societies within SCCS. Factor analysis results reported by Ross revealed that 12 of these variables loaded highly on the common underlying factor, which Ross called the concentration of political power. So we're trading this, it seems to me like we're trading this authoritarianism verbiage for a concentration of political power, which basically just means the same thing anyways. Defining feature of authoritarian political systems, these variables are political role, differentiation, basis of local community leaders, selection, perception of political leaders, power, checks on the leader's power, removal of leaders who are incompetent or disliked, leaders' exercise of authority, operation, decision-making bodies, extensiveness of adult participation in community decisions, litigations, use of third parties for binding decisions, formal sanctions for enforcing community decisions, prevalence of enforcement specialists, that means the police, the IRS, and the level of taxation. Remember, I'm about to press a bunch of buttons. Remember, it was Barack Obama who set the IRS on the Tea Party. Okay? Just remember that. As I'm reading this. It was Barack Obama who wired and tapped and hacked journalists. Okay? This is authoritarianism. Fucking Google it if you want. The prevalence of disease-causing parasites and or viruses. It's my editorialization. We conducted parallel sets of analyses employing two different measures of parasite prevalence. One measure was developed by Cashidan and Steele. We talked about these two people before, based on the historical prevalence of 10 disease-causing pathogens. These authors employed the same source material employed by Murray and Schaller, and I'm in the weeds again, and assigned a historic pathogen prevalence score to each. I'm skipping ahead. Okay, so here, this is the part that I thought was pretty interesting. On top of the stuff that we were talking about before, these guys also talked about 3 additional measures. They talked about malnutrition, famine, and warfare. Which, if you remember, when I talked at the beginning of the show, when I said that I thought that a lot of these places that they looked at for these studies were kind of like third world, maybe African countries or like South American countries or something, that might have played a role in their equation. Well, here, these guys specifically added these 3 measures. These are 3 measures that you would find in third world countries: malnutrition, famine, and warfare. So let's talk about the results and discussion of the second study. Presents zero-order correlation between the variables. Both parasite stress measures were positive predictors to authoritarian governance. In addition, the threat of famine also correlated positively with authoritarian governance, but neither malnutrition nor warfare was significantly associated with authoritarian governance. In additional analysis, we aggregated a society-level values within each of the 6 world regions identified by, this guy Murdoch. He's talking about the authoritarian governance for each of these 6 cultural independent world regions, the correlation between these region level. Okay. Overall, skipping ahead. Overall, these results support the parasite stress hypothesis with both the authoritarian composite measure, but in all but one of its 12 constituent parts, providing convergent results. These results also suggest that the prevalence of disease, irrelevant threat, famine may also uniquely encourage authoritarian political governance, which is consistent with past research that links other threats to authoritarianism. All right, let's move on to the general discussion part of the paper. If you're with me now, you're with me the whole way. You bought the ticket. You got to take the ride. And here we go. Here's the last big dip at the end. Results from both studies provide empirical substantiation for the hypothesis that societal differences in authoritarian governance may result in part from ecological variation in the prevalence of disease-causing parasites / viruses. Study 1 was designed to address one specific alternative explanation for a previously undocumented relation between parasite stress and contemporary nation-level markers of authoritarianism. The results revealed that the relation between parasite prevalence and authoritarian governance was mediated by individual authoritarianism. Hey, you, where's your mask? Hey, why does my neighbor have more than 12 people in their house on Thanksgiving? That's unacceptable. It's outrageous. Don't they know that's a super spreader event? You may not sing. You may not, I don't know, what is it? You may not sing. You may not shout. Well, if you're at Thanksgiving and you're not shouting, you're not at my family's house anyways in Elyria, Ohio. Where's my fucking cranberry sauce? Results revealed that the relation between parasite prevalence and authoritarian governance was mediated by individual authoritarianism, a result that is consistent with the parasite stress hypothesis and inconsistent with the alternative explanation based solely on the colonial spread of political and economic institutions. Study 2 was designed to provide a complementary analysis in a sample of traditional small-scale societies. Results revealed that parasite prevalence predicted a level of authoritarianism or authoritarian governance across a diverse sample of 90 small-scale societies within the SCCS. These results provide further empirical, independent evidence of the hypothesized relation between parasite stress and authoritarian governance. The magnitude of statistical relationship between parasite prevalence and authoritarian governance difference across the two studies. These results were more modest in the sample of the small-scale societies, an example of modern geopolitical regions. All right, I'm skipping ahead a little bit. In addition to parasite prevalence, Study 2 also assessed several additional conceptual distinct forms of threat to human welfare: malnutrition, famine, warfare. Results revealed that both parasite prevalence and famine uniquely predicted the variability of authoritarian governance. These results suggested that the societal implication of parasite stress and the societal implication of famine are distinct from the implications of other variables that might also affect individual fitness and mortality. This conclusion is consistent with the psychological evidence showing that while other threats also influence individuals' conformist and ethnocentric attitudes, the perceived threat of infectious disease has effects that are empirically unique and often especially powerful. The finding, the threat of famine predicts authoritarian governance in small-scale societies, is also convergent with the psychological research showing that individual-level authoritarianism is generally higher during times of resource scarcity. Do you have enough toilet paper? Do you have enough beans, bullets, and band-aids? Two other threats to human welfare. Malnutrition and warfare had negligible relations with authoritarian governance in small-scale societies. Malnutrition may fail to extract any substantial societally based influence due to its chronic and enduring nature, whereas famines are acute and therefore more threat-like. The null result for warfare is perhaps the most surprising, given the prevailing belief that authoritarian governments are more likely to go to war. I have some shit to say. I'm about to press buttons. Okay, never mind. I mean, look at the amount of countries Obama bombed. Look at the kill lists. Look at all that. This is what we're gonna get again. You're welcome, everybody. You've earned it. The null results may be simply due to scale. The warlike nature of authoritarian regimes have typically been ascribed to large nation states. The same principles may not apply to small-scale societies in the sort of represented in the SCCS. I mean, think of like the 4 or 5 peace treaties that happened in the Middle East. Everyone was like, that'll never happen. You have to include the Palestinians. You have to include the Palestinians. Well, what happens when you don't include the Palestinians? Everybody else signs up. I heard a clip of John Kerry going, it's impossible. You have to include the Palestinians in any peace negotiations in the Middle East. Well, what happens? The second you cut them out, if you're talking about like a gangster movie. The second you cut them out, they become nothing. They become a non-factor, and everybody else is like, yeah, I'll sign on to it or whatever. All right, we'll see how fast this gets all fucked up. Although one cannot confidently draw inferences about individual level procession from population level data in the study. I feel like I'm in the weeds. All right, I'm just going to wrap this thing up. Let's see if there's anything here. Yeah, no, that's it. If you're super interested in this, and you should read the whole thing. Like I said, the link will be on there. I don't know, I gave you enough information. You can find it on your own if you want. I'm John Towers. This has been the Abercast. Thank you to Patreon/subscribe supporters, Patreon people. Remember to check your messages. Shit's changing. Feature topic link. I mentioned the feature topic link at the beginning because we've been talking about stuff. Anyhow, this has not been an overall like fist fight on authoritarianism as a whole. But what I'm trying to get you to recognize is the authoritarian in you. I'm trying to get you to look at your attitudes towards what's happening during this pandemic or this parasite stress theory. Parasites and diseases encountered by species shape the development of species values and qualities. And I'm saying, you know, we have a 99.8 survival rate in people that aren't in risk. Is your attitude to this COVID, is this attitude towards your COVID, is this making you a better person or a worse person? Is it making you an authoritarian? I don't know. Do you even care if it is? I mean, I guess that's the question I should be asking that question. Not if it is. Do you even care? Do you mind if you're an authoritarian? Do you mind if you're a brown shirt? Do you mind if the news is lying to you? And these are the questions that keep me up at night. It's questions like these, and also like, how can Han Solo pilot the Millennium Falcon when the cockpit's off to the side? I mean, it's crazy. How could he steer through the asteroid field with the cockpit on the side? It would be so hard to figure out where the other side of your ship is. Anyhow, I'm John Towers, and this has been the Abercast, and I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. I hope everyone came out with no DUI tickets. And yeah, I think we're back to the Satanic Bible next week. We'll see. I love you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.
Hey, did you learn something? Did you laugh? Supporting me is a way for you to be a part of the Abercast and ensure its growth and sustainability. It also means I can create a normal schedule for shows and bonus shows, as well as the exclusive Fellowcraft episodes. By supporting the show, you are not only a listener, but you are a part of the show. You supporting the show gives me a way to offer fun rewards as a thank you for showing your appreciation and support for our projects. Do you have an idea for a reward that you don't see? Let me know. My supporters are my partners. I currently pay for you to listen to the Abercast. Not only do I pay the hosting bills out of my own pocket, I volunteer my time and talent to each and every episode of the Abercast. the price of books, the time and resources of reading and researching, the massive amounts of gin and tonic needed, the equipment it takes to record the shows, the time and resources it takes to create the bonus material, and the cost to maintain the internet presence. Is it worth your support? I don't know. I am proud of the Abercast, and I feel like I'm improving all the time. In addition to creating the show that you dig and that you are excited about, I also have a full-time commitment and other obligations. So why financial support? All of the supporters help me focus my time on the quality and development of the podcast. And what if you can't afford, $1 or $3 or $10 or whatever a month? Believe me, I get that. There are many degrees of support, but if you can't support the show financially, please consider leaving a 5-star rate and review on your preferred podcast app. And don't forget that you could sign into the mailing list and still unlock a lot of bonus content. Thank you. I cannot put into words how much it means to me that you listen to the show each time I post a new episode. Your feedback, support, and love of the stories that we talk about here is what keeps me going.